Picture this. You are home alone. You have just made yourself something to eat. You sit down at the table, or on the couch, or on your bed. And before you take a single bite, before you even pick up your fork, your hand is already reaching for your phone, or the remote, or your laptop. Because eating in silence, eating without something playing in the background, eating with nothing but your own thoughts for company, that feels wrong somehow, uncomfortable, almost unbearable. And so the show goes on, or the video starts, or the podcast plays. And only then, only once the screen is lit and the sound is filling the room, do you actually begin to eat. If that is a ritual you recognize, you are not alone. Research suggests that the majority of Americans now regularly eat while consuming some form of screen media. It has become so normalized that doing the opposite, sitting down to a meal in complete silence, with no phone, no television, no background noise, feels almost radical, almost strange. But here is what I want to show you today. What looks like a harmless modern habit is actually one of the most psychologically revealing behaviors of our time. Because the inability to eat without watching something is almost never really about the food. And it is almost never really about the show. Let us start with what is actually happening in your brain during this ritual. When you eat alone in silence, your brain has nothing external to process, and for many people, that silence does not feel peaceful. It feels loud. Because what fills the silence is not nothing, it's your own mind. Your thoughts, your worries, your to-do lists, your replaying of conversations, your low-level anxiety about the future. Neuroscience research has found that the human brain in a resting state, what researchers call the default mode network, does not actually rest at all. It becomes extraordinarily active, generating self-referential thought, replaying memories, anticipating future scenarios, processing unresolved emotional material. For people whose inner world feels uncomfortable or overwhelming, this default mode activity is not a welcome companion at the dinner table. It's something to be managed, something to be drowned out. And a screen does that job with remarkable efficiency. The first psychological profile behind this behavior is anxiety and the need for cognitive escape. For highly anxious individuals, unstructured time, time without a task, without stimulation, without something external to focus on, is genuinely distressing. The mind rushes to fill the void with worry, with rumination, with all the things that feel unresolved and unmanageable. Eating is one of the few daily activities that does not naturally come with a cognitive task attached. And so for the anxious brain, mealtime without a screen becomes an ambush, a sudden exposure to everything they have been successfully avoiding all day. The screen is not entertainment, it's a pressure valve. It's the thing that keeps the inner noise at a manageable volume while the body does what it needs to do. The second profile involves loneliness and the simulation of companionship. Human beings are fundamentally social creatures. For hundreds of thousands of years, eating was a communal activity, one of the primary contexts in which social bonds were formed and maintained. Eating alone and silence runs directly counter to this deep biological wiring. It can trigger a subtle but genuine sense of absence, of something missing, that the brain registers as uncomfortable, even when the person cannot consciously articulate what it is. Research on what psychologists call parasocial relationships, the one-sided emotional bonds people form with media figures, television characters, and online personalities, has found that consuming media featuring human voices and faces during solitary activities like eating significantly reduces feelings of loneliness and social disconnection. The people on the screen are not real companions, but the brain, which evolved long before television existed, does not always make that distinction cleanly. The voices, the faces, the social interaction playing out on the screen, all of it activates the same neural circuits that real human company would activate. And for someone eating alone, that simulation is genuinely comforting. The third profile is perhaps the most uncomfortable to sit with, and that is the avoidance of the present moment. Eating, when done without distraction, is an extraordinarily present moment activity. It asks you to slow down, to taste, to feel, to be entirely inside your body and your experience for the duration of a meal. For people who are disconnected from their bodies, who live primarily in their heads, who use busyness and stimulation as a way of avoiding stillness, that level of presence can feel deeply uncomfortable. Research on mindful eating has found that people who eat without distraction consume less, enjoy their food more, feel more satisfied, and have significantly better relationships with their own hunger and fullness cues. But mindful eating also requires something that many people find genuinely difficult: being alone with yourself, in your body, without escape, for 20 uninterrupted minutes. And for a growing number of people, that is simply too much to ask. Here is what I want to leave you with. The next time you reach for your phone before you take your first bite, pause for just a moment. Not to judge yourself, not to force yourself into an uncomfortable silence, but just to ask, what am I trying not to feel right now? What is it about this moment, this meal, this silence that feels like something I need to escape from? Because the answer to that question will tell you far more about your inner world than anything playing on your screen ever could. The food will still taste the same, the show will still be there, but what you find in that pause might be worth more than either. And if this fascinated you, there's a lot more waiting for you on this channel. We break down human behavior and psychology in a way that actually makes you see yourself and the people around you differently. Every video goes a little deeper. Check out what's already there and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The next one might explain something you've been trying to figure out for a long time.